pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Sacramite, roll call, please.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Mr. Conley.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Mr. Stahl.
Here.
Dr. Chesney.
Here.
Mr. Birchfield.
Here.
Mrs. Reed is absent.
Okay, do we have a approval of tonight's agenda? So, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Moved by Mr. Conley. Supported by Mr. Rod. Sorry, Roger. That's a lot. We make that move. Any discussion?
I have one amendment or one addition,
Okay.
and the addition is item C under for future action, and it is process for purchase of services.
Okay.
I can either pass this out now or wait until we get there, whatever is the...
This is what you get.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 6-0. This brings us to the first call to the public. Does anyone wish to address the board this evening in the first call to the public? Okay, seeing none, that'll close the first call to the public, and that will move us to the superintendent report. Dr. Gray.
Yeah, two things tonight from me. One, we talked a little bit about a month or so ago about an enrollment update. We've been tracking the numbers. This is where we're at pretty much today. They fluctuate by 1 or 2 each day. But what you have in front of you are two handouts. And one is from February 8th of 2017, so last year's second, fourth Wednesday count, and this year's September 26th of 2017, this year's fourth Wednesday count. So, or actually the week before fourth Wednesday count. So if you take a look, just some of the neat comparisons as you look at this, and we've talked a great deal, or at length at this table about school of choice and numbers, and the good part is when you look at our numbers, our enrollment beat our projections. Our projections were about 5974. If you look on the second page at the bottom, you can see 6140. 6140 is a head count, so there's some partials in there and some consortium kids, but it looks like in district we're up about 70-ish kids, and then shared service we're up about 200 or so. So a real good start to the school year. I think some of the interesting notes, though, if you go back to page 1, you can kind of see how we break it down, and Karen Jacobs and Starr do these documents for us. And you can compare apples to apples from February to September. And if you look at the columns, the first one obviously is all BAS without the bridge. And then you go to Hawkins, Hilton, Horning, Spencer, and so on on the second page or the back of the first page. And you can see our school of choice percentage actually went down by 2% from a district-wide percentage of 15% down to 13%, or about 756 to 683. You can see where they're from within the county, where they're from without of the county, in the SOC within county, and SOC contiguous county. You can see by building, so Hawkins, for example, last year is 14%, this year is 9%. Hilton was 23%, but if you look to the right where the asterisk is, the extra all-day K kindergarten classroom open late August, so it skews that number a little bit in relation to, we had one section of school of choice kids that we placed at a particular building. So if you pulled those out, they would be out in line with the other buildings so far. And then you can again see, so the trend looks pretty good, or this year looks pretty good. We'll see in the years to come if it's an actual trend, or if it's a blip. We think it probably is a trend. What we're seeing with our polyplot or our busing scatter plot diagram, our neighborhoods rolling over. We've been seeing that pretty significantly. Especially in the Spencer area, we've seen quite a bit, and in a couple other areas, we've seen neighborhoods kind of rolling over, which happens from time to time. So we'll continue to take a look at this. We'll pull our second, fourth Wednesday count as well, and kind of run through that. The only place we've seen not really an increase, but a maintain, is at the secondary level. We are getting some kids at the secondary level, especially the high school has been very, very popular. We don't really look at school of choice at the Bridge very much because it's always been about 50-50. About half our population is Brighton population, and the other half is from not only within our county, but lots of contiguous counties that touch our ISD. So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view. I would welcome you to kind of run through these numbers, take a look. Again, you can see it broken down by grade. You can see it broken down by within county, without a county, all the different schools. And when you look on page 2 again, when you see consortium, the way that works is that's the LATEC consortium. And LATEC consortium typically runs anywhere from about, the last several years has been about 75 to 80 kids. This year we're over 100 kids in that LATEC consortium. And we get about 33% of those kids because they're typically with us 2 hours out of a 6-hour day. And so if we have 100, that would mean an actual FTE count of about 33. So again, numbers are trending pretty interestingly. We'll see, long term, we will be bringing before you a limited school of choice for second semester, which we do every year. Remember the way limited school of choice works. Star, remind me, is it a week we leave it open or 2?
15 days.
15 days we leave it open. We typically do that at December-ish.
Yes.
And you're only required in the grades that you do limited to take one student in each one of those. And what we do is we look for open seats, and then we backfill open seats in terms of that without creating overloads, because it wouldn't make any sense for us to take a school of choice student for an overload, because an overload for a second semester for us would be about $1,500 or $750 depending on the level, and you're only getting 10% of that particular FTE. So it'd be a loss in terms of us on that. So we look at areas we can backfill without creating overloads or imbalances, and that's what we do. I'll entertain any questions, or again, if you want to pour through this and then email me or call me later, or even stop in and see me. I've talked to a couple of you that were already in about this, but interesting numbers. We'll see what happens as we move forward.
Dr. Gray, on the capacities in the buildings, looking at, let's just start at the high school, what can the high school hold for students?
So if you remember back to the largest enrollment in our high school's history, that would take us back to 2003, and we had 2,700 physical bodies in that building. Right now we're at about 2,100, so about 600 capacity. I think by state code, that building actually would push to over 3,000. That would be too many. I don't foresee that happening in the future anyways.
At this time, there's plenty of room in the high school.
Plenty of room in the high school. Our elementary's capacity are 650 apiece. Again, I don't think you'd want to put 650 in any of our elementary buildings. That would be too much. They're all going to track, we think, in that 500 to 525. Horning's a little higher as we transition one group through, but that should drop in accordance with the other ones as we go through time. Maltby and Scranton, when I got here, Scranton was close to 1,200. Maltby was about 1,050. Close to 1,100, and we're in the 800-ish to 900 range now. So, again, plenty of capacity, plenty of room.
Thank you.
I have some questions too. So just following this, one could assume that the all zero, say, from February 2017 becomes the all one in September 26, 2017, right? So I mean, these are pre-K becoming K or first grade, or K becoming first grade.
All zero would be junior kindergarten and kindergarten combined.
Junior kindergarten and kindergarten.
Yep. And if you recall, the last couple of years, we've had 6 sections of junior kindergarten, which is capped out at 20. And then we had the rest of the sections of kindergarten, which is capped out at 24.
Okay. And so then, so we can see that number 2, so it was 70% school of choice in February, and now it's 50. That same group of students, that same cohort is now 15%.
Right.
Okay. So then, reading this, then and positively projecting into the future, the all zero is 4% school of choice. So basically, what that means is that we're doing an excellent job recruiting both within Brighton area schools area. All right, so to drive that number down.
Yeah, this is one of our largest kindergartens we've had in some time.
Okay.
And so not only is it large, it's also large, heavy and resident.
Yes.
So that's a significant change for us.
Yes.
We've had to backfill for quite a number of years. Again, we hadn't seen the neighborhoods roll over. And our guess is there's a couple of reasons as house values return to pre-2008, 2009 or above, because we've had significant changes in terms of home values. So maybe people that had held on through the tough time are now selling and moving on and getting what they either paid or more for their houses. And we've seen an influx. I don't think Star went a day, or myself went a day this summer, or Karen Jacobs, when people didn't come into our office and beg us to sell our house to them because they just couldn't find, there wasn't a lot of inventory for them.
Okay. And that's a really good thing to have happening. I mean, that's a healthy thing to have happening.
I think it's healthy. Again, our goal is to be around 6,000 kids.
Yep.
That's a great number for our district. As we blend them, again, we've always talked about percentages of school of choice and why it's harder to pass bonds when you get over 20% and how you dilute and work through your particular environment. So, again, I wouldn't call it a trend yet because it's a one-year thing.
Yep.
But if it's any indication of people that Star and I have talked to, and Karen Jacobs out of our offices, we think it'll probably hold. But again, I wait till I see the whites of their eyes.
Very good. Thank you for the excellent news.
Anyone else?
Well, the other update tonight, Mr. Birchfield, is we've worked to put together a December 18th workshop on my evaluation. We're going to do a refresher. We're going to have to look for an earlier date. My understanding is you guys would like to accomplish that prior to January 1, which I'm prepared to do it at any time. But we'll look for dates sometime in the beginning of November. Probably makes sense for us to do the two formal parts of it, the second meeting in November and the only meeting in December. And then we can go from there. I have the materials prepared now. I could do it tonight, but let me see if I can get a refresher real quick. What I could even do, I think, is I could do a refresher on the night of, before we go into closed session for my evaluation. If you'd like that, if you'd like to double them up, why don't you guys talk about it and you give me a call and let me know how you want to work that.
So just as a reminder, the refresher will address what we covered in one of our board retreats back in March or April. And at that point, we had talked about changing the cycle for the evaluation to earlier in the year, because when you get into January and we have an election year with new board members coming on, they're then in a position where they have to evaluate the superintendent on coming in, 2-3 months into the job, and that's a pretty tough spot to be in. So by bringing the performance evaluation to have it complete by the end of December will then allow the current board to complete that process, and we should have a better evaluation process. So what I would suggest, this is my own personal opinion, I would prefer to do the refresh on a day outside of the board meeting. I don't know, what are other thoughts?
We have a captive audience at neither of the board meetings. I don't know that I agree with doing them both on the same night, but it's like we all know we're going to be here. So there's that.
I can also, previous to the board meeting or prior to the board meeting, I can send out, because it's a new tool this year, it's a brand new tool, so I can resend that tool, I can resend some of the materials. If people have individual questions, as always, you can call me. I feel like I could give a 20-minute presentation, probably. You could have a pretty good understanding of the process.
Well, so that's what I was wondering. Number one, one's going to take 2 hours to explain. And number two, it'd certainly help if we got the material first to look at it. So if we did have questions, then we could go and ask them.
So why don't I get you well, again, it's up to you, Mr. Butcher.
Better.
Well, I think instead of doing a refresher on a non-regular scheduled board meeting night, and instead of trying to do it during the board meeting, maybe we could meet ahead of time, like 6:30 or 6 o'clock on a regular scheduled board meeting. I mean, that way we just have to adjust our schedules, 45 minutes an hour earlier, as opposed to trying to coordinate a totally different day. That'd be my suggestion.
Okay. Everybody, does that sound amiable to everybody? All right, so let's work on that, let's set it up for maybe 45 minutes prior to the board meeting, the formal board meeting starting, and then we can just do the refresher, knock it out.
So here's what I'm hearing, just so I can say it, so staff can get it. I'm going to send you, prior to the next board meeting, a refresher of all the paperwork. So you can look at the evaluation and you can kind of see it again. And then prior to the next board meeting, we'll come in 45 minutes to an hour early. We'll run through it together. And then at the second meeting in November, I'll actually do the presentation that I typically give with my artifacts and those types of things. And then you will have until the single and only meeting in December to return the materials to STAR. And then go from there.
So the first meeting in November will start at 6.
Correct. That's when we'll do the refresher. Then you would have 2 weeks to ask me any questions prior to going into the closed session to run over my artifacts. And then you'd have 2 weeks after that prior to the December meeting to actually do it, return it to STAR. And then move forward.
6,
Okay.
13th, November 13th.
November 13th.
Okay. Does that work for everybody? Sounds good.
That's all I have tonight. But then we have our bridge student.
Hello, my name is Devin Hankey, and I am the senior representative at the bridge this year. At our parent-teacher conference last week, we had a record amount of parents come in to speak to our teachers at 36% of our entire student body. Our leadership group, Mayo Stars, will be attending the fall kickoff event in Okemos, Michigan on Tuesday, November 14th. At this event, we'll connect with other alternative students and participate in team building activities. The bridge would like to thank board member John Conley for his donation to our Teens for Change student group. We truly appreciate it, Mr. Conley. This week and through next Tuesday, Teens for Change is recognizing Red Ribbon Week. Red Ribbon Week focuses on drug and abuse prevention. Come see our Red Ribbon Week bulletin board and take the pledge. Students will also be participating in activities encouraging making healthy choices for their lives. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, that moves us out of superintendent report and to the Board of Education bulletins. Does anybody have anything tonight in this space? Yeah?
Yeah, recently it was at the auto lab, there was a kind of robotics recruitment night and kind of getting organized. And the number I've got is in the neighborhood of, but somewhere around 80 students this year. So from 3 to 5 to 20 to now 80. Not sure how that's going to process and what the final number of the team was. I just want to share the good news on that. And also over at the bridge, I met with John's team regarding some programs here outside of other items we were doing. Actually, Roger Myers and myself met with her. And I think that's pretty exciting. She's working on some ideas and got some things I'll talk about when we get down to the community reports, which kind of apply. I think that, all in all, good things happening.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? I have one item that I talked to Dr. Gray about last week, and just for visibility or awareness, one of the things I've asked for Dr. Gray to work on to make happen, and this has become a standing item each year, will be a tabletop exercise within each school building, which is a scenario, so a scenario-based emergency exercise that staff can participate or should participate in. I have offered that to assist in at least getting the first several off the ground. We'll work to make this happen on an annual basis. They're incredibly valuable tools to better prepare and enhance the emergency preparedness, safety, and security of the staff as well as the students. And so this will be something that we're going to try to drive forward moving forward.
Mr. Birch, I think that's a great idea, and the thing is, like you said, it's an annual event, it keeps it in front of us, where it doesn't, so if you have new people coming in, people going, it keeps the concepts current. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, in the bulletin side is, I don't see anything regarding finance on our agendas right now. I don't see anything regarding curriculum and development from Dr. Surrey or from Dr. Gesterby. So, just wanted to know that I don't see it, I haven't seen it in several weeks.
We put it under superintendent report if there's a report.
Well, I like the idea that it's on there, and I like to hear from them personally. That makes sense. I like to hear from each department. As a board member, I have no problem, Dr. Gray, if you ask, you always find out what the deal is. But like, just as a person that's not involved in it every day and everything that's going on, I think it's, I understand it opens up the door to other questions sometimes, because they may not have all the answers, because they didn't know ahead of time or whatever, but for me as a board member, I'd like to have that on the agenda still.
Glad you brought that up, because I was going back through some old board packets, and I looked at that as well.
Good. Anything else? All right. That moves us to 4 actions. So the first item for action tonight is minutes of the October 9th, 2017. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 9th, 2017?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item B, donation, Spencer Elementary.
We recommend you accept the donation of $3,500 from the Ditto family and $6,000 from Buckley Jolly for one of our new service dogs per board policy 7230 with appreciation.
Do we have a motion to approve with appreciation the donation of the service dogs to Spencer Elementary?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
I think we should thank the community for chipping in and helping us, and we should do the same from the school board side, and whatever we need to do to take care of our students. And the benefit is unbelievable for those students that the opportunity, it's unreal transition.
Dr. Gray, can you remind us on how many dogs we now have in the schools?
So we actually have 2 in the schools. There's 2 more at training. Training is about 14 months. And then this one would be the 5th dog that would be born and then go into training. Typically buy out of the same bloodline. It's from a place called Choke Breeding up in COCK or something like that, up in Traverse City. They're typically related, these dogs are. And then there's a pretty lengthy training process that they go through. Duncan right now is at Maltby Intermediate. Caesar is semi-retired at the high school, and then there's 3 more coming. So we're still working on 2 more. It really would work better if we ended up with 4, because I got a request from the senior center the other day, our senior citizen group, that they were looking for a therapy dog as well. These aren't really service dogs, they're therapy dogs. There's a difference.
What do you see the results with these animals? What do you see?
You know, it's funny because we had an interview from NPR today, was in the district, and they were at Maltby Intermediate with Duncan, some of the kids, and myself, Mr. Brenner, and Mrs. Story were interviewed, but the best interview was from one of our students over there, and she talked about how students that might feel anxious or might be nervous to read aloud in class get a lot of practice and a lot of anxiety lessening from spending time with Duncan. There's a reward system that we have for Fridays too, where you can win a day with Duncan. He is in your class during that day. Duncan roams the hallways. Duncan's at 5th grade camp right now, probably getting little to no sleep like everybody else at 5th grade camp. And so the dogs really have multifaceted uses, and for nothing other than lessening anxiety, making kids like school more, they're worth every penny just for that. So I don't know when they're going to shoot me an email and when it'll be on the radio.
I think it's great, like you said.
Yeah, I thought the Livingston Daily did a nice article on it the other day. I think that's how public radio picked up on it.
But again, it's proactive move then. It's you're making,
Yeah.
making
Yeah,
positive
well,
change.
people don't understand this.
Environment.
The school district owns those dogs. So we own the dogs, which is rare. I don't know of any other schools that are doing that in the state. I think we'd definitely be the first one that had one in every single building. The dogs go home with a particular staff member at night that we have a process where they submit, not bids, but submit to actually take the dog home at night. The costs are picked up by, I believe it's Pet Supplies Plus that does not only the food, but something else in relation. But it's been very, very good. I've seen Caesar and I've seen Duncan now in action. Duncan's half brother is coming here shortly, Scout, and then the other dogs will be in training for the 14 months, and we'll just keep pushing away until we get all of them where we need.
All right.
Do the dogs know when they're off duty?
They do. You know what signifies it to them is their vest.
Really?
So when they put their vest on, they know it's time for business. I mean, like Duncan is a year and a half years old, and he is calm as a cucumber when his vest is on. You take it off, he runs around like a puppy. And they go through. It's a military training, and the training is for comfort and is for anxiety lessening, like PTSD. And so you can tell he's ready to work. He seeks kids out, so does Caesar, and does a great job. But when the vest comes off, he's all puppy, that's for sure.
All right, well, let's make this official. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 6-0. And once again, thank you to the Ditto family as well as Buckley Jolly. Much appreciated. Item C, Steinway bid acceptance.
We recommend that you approve the purchase of the Steinway Model L 1927 for $225,000. I've done some more question answering since the last meeting. I did meet with the gentleman that was here, Mr. Hoy. We had a great talk in terms of our need versus what they want. Again, this is a practice piano for a practice room where multiple users are going to be on it. The whole reason we're looking at this type of piano is not only size, but we don't need a brand new piano for it. The analogy I would use is it would be like if we bought all brand new uniforms for all of our sports teams and told them to go practice in them. That doesn't make a lot of sense for us. So this was the type of piano we were looking for. You have all received the RFP process in relation to this. I think the piano is going to be very, very useful for a long, long time. I know Mr. Johnson is very excited about this because it will replicate similar to the piano that we use in our concert series in the BCPA, and so we recommend this without hesitation.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the Steinway bid acceptance? So moved. By Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Myers. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item D, overseas field trip.
I'll let Dr. Suri tackle this one.
We're bringing this the second time before the board. It's a field trip for social studies, AP, European history, the summer of 2019, so it's a whole year away, to Central Europe. And, excuse me, Colleen Buchanan is the teacher coordinating that. She's provided us with 3 separate bids and a signed contract to the district, a group that we've used before in the past. So we're asking for the final approval for that so we can move forward.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the overseas field trip?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
This went out for bids, correct?
Well,
Or
Well,
It is
went out, I'm
about,
sorry, went out for
they
quotes.
solicited 3 different companies that they use, that provide the service.
Okay. And have we used any of the other companies before?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I know we've used this one, and they're hoping that down the line it will be streamlined, because this is the only one they continue to go back to, and it was the best overall package and value.
Okay.
Did you say there was a signed contract?
Well, only what we have in here is the contract that's back, that's sent to me and Colleen Buchanan. Just what they put together, the tour price quote. So it's not a signed contract, I should probably say the same thing, but
So I guess at the end of the day, who ends up signing this? Who has legal signing power when you're doing, or for the school district that can sign this?
well, historically, the teacher would sign it, but the board has asked for someone from the district to sign it, so I'm the signatory for the superintendent. So,
So,
but we had to go back and request that, because that's an unusual request for an agency like this. They usually just work with the teachers who are organizing.
well, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But again, so moving forward, the teacher's not authorized to sign for the district on these contracts. Is that correct? It's your signature?
Well, and this, yes.
Okay.
I mean, Colleen and I were both signed this, or it's been written to both of us. I won't be on the tour, so I think her name needs to be on this as well.
Right, but again, you're the designated
district.
signer of the district.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay.
The only other question I had, and this isn't, I'm not, the questions I'm asking are questions that we still need answers to, but aren't gonna hold up the vote. Is in the emergency situations, emergency services, so they indicate that they'll provide transportation home if needed for emergency reasons, but we need to get a little bit more detail on what that is and what is covered and not covered. Because there may be special circumstances that require different types of transportation than a general standards airfare seat. And then additionally, I don't see anything in here about emergency evacuation, so if for whatever reason we had a group in a location where there was civil unrest or some other type of situation that occurs and they need to get out, whether or not we have coverage for that.
So, Mr. Birchfield, I have my email open right now. I'm gonna send you an email
Okay,
with what I just heard.
okay,
If you could just shoot that back to me,
Yeah.
I will forward this to Colleen. She's been very accommodating to go back to the vendor and, again, put together, answer the questions, but those are even more specific. So
okay,
I'll send you an email and you send it back to me, so when you get a chance.
that's
On
fine.
that.
And
And
I,
any other questions?
I guess the other, just to follow up on what Mr. Trombley's bringing up, I'm wondering whether this is something, and I think maybe it falls in line with what Dr. Chesney's going to talk about in a few minutes. Is this, are we doing enough business in this space? I guess I don't know the answer. I don't know how many overseas trips a year we're doing, and we see a couple, it seems like, every year that come in front of us. That we need to look at a little bit more in depth. Do we look at contracting a single entity for vendor service for these trips? Is there value in doing that? Is there travel insurance that would be worthwhile in us looking at into further for costs that they may not cover under this organization? Just something, food for thought, something to consider.
This is self-funded, right?
This is self-funded. It looks like they do, they might do some fundraising, but I think overall it's self-funded. But still, I mean, it's our kids, it's an expensive trip, and it's our kids, and the way, I mean, the world today is not the same as it once was in terms of travel, and therefore I want to make sure that we're not putting our kids and our staff in a situation that could become potentially problematic, or if it does, or at least there's some services that are available that we can take quick action on.
Andy, that would mean possibly a screening weeks before the trip? for a certain date.
We do that.
You'd be screening, seeing the conditions
Yeah.
in the area, and, again, that would be pretty basic. I'm sure you do that
Yeah,
now. So
we've canceled trips before.
Correct. So I would think that there's some processes in place, and it's been going on for years, but with, like you said, the destabilization and stable.
Right.
And so, again, I think they're pretty cautious on that. I would suggest maybe we find out what we've been doing and say, what have we done in the past? And then maybe then you could add your 100% spot on, so this is where we're going to do as much as we can.
Yep.
But still not say we're giving into this stuff. We want our kids to have those opportunities and they come back with, get our close in government, we heard the report on that, the wonderful changes for the students. They'll get to go to Washington, spend 5 days, just 5 days, 3 days, 5 days, wonderful trip.
Yeah, this is, my questions aren't by any means, I mean, part of the value in academic endeavor is to get out and experience the world, but it's also, we have to make sure that safety and security is at the forefront with that, so. Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 6-0. Item E, new hires, certified staff.
Yeah, we recommend the approval of these two staff members. We've talked about them at length. The 1.0 counselor at Brighton High School has replaced Caitlin Van Cleve, who took a job in Ann Arbor, her hometown. Erica Mackin at the Bridge, a 1.0 special education teacher, has come to fruition based out of need, and we want to make sure we service students. There's only a certain amount of caseload that we can have. We were going to be above caseload, so it dictated us hiring another special education teacher. So met both of them. They're great. We're looking forward to them. They have some experience, which is wonderful, especially in both of these positions, and we recommend them highly.
Do we have a motion to approve the new hires presented? So moved by Mr. Stahl,
Second.
seconded by Dr. Chesney. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? 6-0. All right, that completes the 4 action items this evening and takes us into 4 future action. Item A is still in committee, so we are going to not be discussing that tonight, and we will move to item B, student handbook revisions.
Periodically, as we work through our different policy changes, the handbooks need to come back in front of you in relation to revisions. We have Mr. Ayton here tonight to answer any specific questions. The revisions are either highlighted in red for all the levels, or they're actually partitioned out by page number like they did in the elementary and the high school. The other ones are redlined in the intermediate and middle school levels. A lot of them have to do with the new language of bullying, cyberbullying, intimidation, weapons, changes to our policies. But what we do with these is we wait for our policies to come through, and then we match our handbooks to our policies. So, Mr. Eaton, I don't know if you have anything further with that, or
any questions you have? A lot of it's updating also, just kind of things that change over time.
Any questions?
So, just a question, what is the genesis of these changes? Are they internal, or are they, that we review the policy and then we come up with changes per year? Or is this a state policy coming
so
down?
the policy that you passed, the board policy at the table,
Yes.
when they redefine bullying to cyberbullying, or they add some words to what bullying is,
Or is there a Neola policy?
Neola
So
policy.
the Neola policies come through and we
And
vote on
then
them.
we adjust.
Okay.
We adjust our handbooks to match policy, because what will happen is we'll get in a situation where there's a suspendable offense or a expellable offense, and when the attorneys and everybody gets involved, they try to match the handbooks to the policy to make sure that everything is in order, and we like it to be in order because we like those processes to go well. Plus, we like people to, be able to clearly understand what the expectations are in each building. And so, once a year we sit down as a committee, we run through these books, we try to match up what we've done with what we need to do, and then that's the revisions you typically get.
So, has anybody ever deconflicted, and this isn't specific to Maltby, and this question isn't for you actually, but if we deconflicted, so K through 4 as an example, so that they're consistent? And then I'm assuming
Yeah.
Maltby and Scranton are pretty consistent.
Our 4 elementary principals sit down together,
Okay.
and they run through their handbooks, and they run through them in relation to policy changes. Mr. Brunner and Mr. Ayton typically do theirs, then they'll meet up probably with Mr. Wilson, and then Mr. Wilson will meet up with the high school as well, and then we all meet as a group in our all administrators meeting. We make sure we crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's.
Okay.
It's quite a lengthy process, actually. We spend a lot of time on it. Doesn't mean we don't miss things from time to time, but we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get these things right, because arguments always happen related to handbooks, always, because it's the rules.
What would you say is the most substantive change?
I would say the bullying piece, that's what I saw.
Yeah, we added cyberbullying, which is the needed piece, need to spell it out so we can use those words with our kids and our parents.
And do we define cyberbullying then?
Yeah, it's defined multiple places. Go to Maltby's. It's defined as the use of information and communication technology such as not limited to email, cell phone, instant messaging, defamatory personal websites, defamatory online personal polling websites to support deliberate and repeated hostile behavior by an individual or group that is intended to harm others. Trying to pull in all those apps and the websites and
Social networks.
Individual or group.
yeah.
And I'm assuming also because we discussed it in a previous board meeting, the fact that students are allowed to have something to drink on the buses. Is that correct?
Yeah, kids bring water on the bus every day.
So
Every
they're not going to get in trouble, as it says in the handbook, for eating, drinking, or anything.
So
No,
what the,
I think that's more,
you can't bring a full breakfast on the
full
bus.
food meals and,
Right. That's what it says in the handbook.
Yeah. yeah, I think that's more.
That's the thing that people don't always understand about schools is everybody wants all the rules to be black and white, and that would be really easy if we were working with the same person. But there's always areas of gray in terms of discipline, because every situation is a little different. But if kids want to bring waters because they're thirsty,
So what, does everybody cut their best deal? Is that the idea?
we don't cut deals. Other people
Well, that's my point. If the rules are rules, I mean,
yeah, but
everybody's.
because I've done discipline in large high schools and beyond, every situation is a little different. It just is. There has to be some, that's why they're written generically, because there has to be some room for interpretation. Because a person saying a cuss word as opposed to cussing out a teacher might both be deemed profanity, but there's going to be a different level of penalty for each one of those two things. That's the best example I can give you.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, process for future of services. Dr. Chesney.
Yes, and this is related to an item, this will kind of blend into the board committee report with the financial subcommittee. So I'll start here and then we'll end up leading into that. But the first part that we asked, just to recall some history on this, is that we have specific and legal obligations for policy related to purchased goods. And those policies change based upon whether the items are less than 1K, between 1K and 23.8K, or above 23.8K for this year. And that value, the 23.8K, it changes year to year. All right, and that's for purchase of goods, purchase of stuff. Okay, we do not have policy for purchase of services. So the financial committee, financial subcommittee worked on what is the correct policy for the purchase of services. And that's what this conversation was about. And where this conversation started, or part of where this conversation started, I asked Dr. Gray to put together what are services that we purchase and to break it down into 3 different subsets. One of the subsets is those services that are less than 50K, those services that are between 50K and 100K, and then those services that are above 100K. And just for your viewage, your perusal, let me pass this out and give everybody just a second to take a look at these, just to see kind of what's in those different sets, because it's particularly interesting. maybe we can open it up for, I got a couple questions about these different subjects if I could before we go into the policy. Dr. Gray, so in the 50 to 100K band, what is cash flow borrowing and what is energy management?
Energy management is how we manage our natural gas and diesel fuel. And cash flow borrowing would be the process when we cash flow borrow. When we know that late spring, our last state aid payment doesn't typically align with some of our payrolls. This year, this is data from 16-17 because we haven't been through 17-18.
Yep.
So this would have been the borrowing cost from last year.
Okay. And energy management, so it's management of energy, but that doesn't mean anything.
So what it means is that there are always people monitoring the market
Okay.
and going out and purchasing natural gas and diesel gas at low prices. And it's almost like you're purchasing futures so that if we time the market correctly, that we can have some significant savings. We've definitely generated some savings, I'd say, over the last 6 or 7 years as we've been doing this.
So buy it cheap and is basically the idea. Buy it
That's the goal. Buy it stable.
Buy it stable.
Yeah, you know, there is a cost to doing business, but trying to avoid market corrections is what we typically try.
Okay.
So what is transportation?
Transportation, if you remember, several years ago, I don't even know if you were on the board yet, Bill. No, you wouldn't have been, because it's been my first 6 months here. We privatized pretty much everything.
Right.
And there was a bid process for each one of those, from custodians to sub-teachers to paras to transportation, and on and on and on. So those things were bid in terms of privatized companies and the cost of doing business with the privatized companies. That led us to the RTC, or Regional Transportation Collaboration, through LASA.
Right.
So that was something that we did back then.
So how do you bid that now?
So if you wanted to do transportation again, you put it out for bid based on parameters that you'd select in an RFP, and you look for savings in terms
And
of...
again, I'll go back the same way with food service. How would you put food service out to bid?
If there's an RFP process.
Well, but what are you bidding?
You're bidding the
other than
workers.
price?
No, you bid the workers. These are the workers. These are the people. When you look at health insurance, food service, transportation, custodians, substitute teachers, athletic coaches,
You're telling us we have
these are,
$2 million worth of wages in food service workers?
yeah, I'm sure we do. And food both.
No. Service and food, right?
In
Wages
that,
and
in that total dollar amount, that's the line item for food service in our district.
Okay, all right. So I understand bidding the food,
Mhm.
right, which you probably do anyways, right?
Correct.
Because he's always looking for the best deal.
A lot of those are consortium price too,
Yeah.
where they're already bid.
Okay.
But we bid the people back in the day as well.
So that's wages and product.
Correct. And again, when you look at health insurance, we're required, is it PA 106, I believe? Every 3 years we bid health insurance. Doesn't mean the groups have to take it, but it means we bid it, so.
Well, then down here it says bus duty, lunch duty, and crossing guards. That's separate than food service.
Correct, because those are third-party
Okay.
contracted people.
And then is fuel part of that transportation?
Fuel is... Was it energy management? Heat, wasn't heat and electricity, I can't remember.
I'm talking fuel for the
Buses.
buses.
That's part of transportation.
And then the people in the garage, mechanics and things as well.
Part of transportation.
So under transportation, that's fuel,
Bless you.
mechanic wages, and supplies.
Drivers,
The bus drivers
supervisors,
are included in this.
supervisors.
Okay.
It used to be actually higher than that. We saved about, Maria, remind me, I think we saved about $1 million when we went to the ROTC.
But again, my point in just what I'm asking here is you got this lumped in at $1.6 million. You don't bid that as a $1.6 million item.
We have.
We have.
So you bid so you bid the mechanics, you bid the wages, you
Sure.
bid the fuel. You
Kelly-
did everything for one supplier to supply it all?
Kelly Dean.
Kelly Dean,
Transportation.
and there were, I
A
know
couple
there
from
were
Ohio. I still have the
From
bids,
Ohio
we
and-
have to hold them.
So when was that?
2009, 10. That's when we did it.
Well, that's, okay.
That's why we're having this conversation.
Exactly. Well, exactly my point, yes, thank you.
Yes and no. I mean, you also have to understand the operation of the district. So we joined a consortium, and there are some benefits that come to us from the consortium. We constantly monitor the prices of different groups in terms of that. So you could bid it again. Our recommendation would probably be to stay with
So
your.
is it fair to say these numbers are from 2009?
Not all of them. No, the only one that I would say, the couple of them that are from them would be food service, because we haven't bid it, because we like the way our group operates, and they give 15% to the district each year. Transportation, custodians is probably 5 years, because we switched the process.
These are last year's costs.
These are last year's costs, but he's asking when it was bid last. Yeah.
But again, going back to the bidding process, this isn't really the bidding process the way I'm looking at it.
Sure it is. Because remember, you're not legally required to bid any services. We bid every service on this list.
Yeah.
We bid every service in this list.
Yes.
We're not required to, but we do, is what I'm saying. So we're answering your question exactly the way you want us to answer the question. These
No.
services we
And I'll
bid.
tell you why.
Yeah.
It's not at least the way I'd like to see it, because under transportation, I would certainly like to see the fact that we're bidding the fuel for the buses. I'd certainly like to see we're bidding the oil and lube for the buses, the mechanic. You're telling me that this is all included. And I'm saying, you know,
You'd like
that's a bogus number.
us to separate those?
Well, again, you're not gonna go out and bid $1.6 million worth of services.
That's what we did last time.
You did that in 2009.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so next year, are you gonna go bid everything for 1.6 million?
If you'd like us to.
No, that's what I'm asking. I don't think you are.
Right.
So again, I would like to see the fuel, those types of things, because it's not gonna be probably over the 100,000. It's gonna be in another category,
Well, correct. Yeah, it'll be under.
which again, isn't necessarily reflective in the other categories that are 50 and under and 50 to 100,000.
So the question is about to what level do we discretize the different funds? And
Well, all I see is all this is
what we bid?
being rolled into one lump sum category for accounting, and that's transportation. But there's a lot of items in transportation that get bid, I would say.
Okay, let me ask a clarifying question then. So, would you like us then, if we're looking at transportation, to bid oil?
Did you bid the fuel this year for the buses?
LASA handles that.
Yeah.
Okay, did they bid the fuel for the buses?
Sure they did.
Okay.
So, again, I don't know what the question, should we bid the fuel and bid the oil separately, or how do we do that?
My only point to this whole thing right here is the headings. I don't believe this is an accurate statement for at least what I'm looking for. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Okay? Because again, this is from 2009. It's
Not
not
all.
a true representation of what we
So what
are actually doing.
Mr. Tremblay, you're making, the questions you're asking are good questions and good points. And I think so let's take this as an example of what we're currently, the position we're currently in. Dr. Chesney, why don't you continue with presenting what the proposed solution would be moving forward?
Very good. So, repeating again, I asked Dr. Gray to break this down into under 50,000, 50,000 to 100, and over 100,000. And then the finance subcommittee put together a resolution on Friday, which I wrote up and put on copies today, so I'll pass this out. And this is the wording that we came up with. Please take a look at this. And my printer wasn't working, so I used the old-fashioned way, Iris and Ghost Love. So it says, be it resolved that beginning July 1st, 2018, or fiscal year 2018, all purchase services having an annual cost exceeding $100K will be bid using an RFP process within a 3 to 5 year period. All resulting bids will be presented to the BAS Board of Education for approval. So the issues that were open to the Finance Subcommittee was the starting date, whether it should be 50 or 100K, and whether it should be 3 to 5 years. And this is the final resolution that was put together by the subcommittee.
So they can sign a contract up to 3 years or 5 years? Up to 5 years, and then they can sign a contract.
Yes.
Sometimes we get a better rate.
I'd say we
We did that with lawn care.
Yeah, right.
You know, a little better rate with 3.
but yeah, quality of service isn't provided, we have a valid contract.
We have ways out of the contract. You know, typically we have a 20 to 30 day out clause in the majority of our contracts for Mr. Connolly saying lack of service.
A couple thoughts from my end. I think this is a great start. This is what I was hoping for. I would say that in terms of the 3 to 5 year, I think we maybe want to look at it more of just putting a max on there of up to 5 years unless otherwise agreed upon by the board for an extended period of time. Because there may be a situation where we want to extend or have a longer term contract. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but that way we could get into an agreement that may be a 1 or 2 year contract too, depending on price.
Which we have too. We have some of those as well.
So I don't know that we want to limit ourselves on that, in that front, but I do think, to me, anything beyond 5 years is too long to get into a contract without going back out to any. And secondly, I would suggest that we lower the 100,000 amount. I'm honestly thinking more in line with about 25K.
Oh, there was way too much time to do that. Let's look at the list.
I mean, that was a topic that we discussed at length in our finance committee meeting. In terms of what would be really the appropriate minimum threshold, because there's a lot of these costs, and if you look at for example, the $50,000 to $100,000 range, there's athletic officials, $52,000. I mean, as a practical matter, you're not going to put a contract out for athletic
Cash flow
officials.
borrowing, you're not.
Right.
Plumbing repairs, you're not.
So there's some operational difficulties in trying to pigeonhole that threshold into a requirement that it be put out for bid or for a quote. And so looking at all these factors, we felt that collectively as the committee that it really made sense to target that threshold as $100,000.
The responsibility, obviously, the superintendent and the staff are responsible. And in that, even someday when Dr. Gray retires, you don't have somebody so tied down that they don't take the job. And this is not necessarily governed by a school board. Usually it's governed by state regulations. I think the superintendent can talk about that, which we've operated under successfully for years. Now with a proven track record. Obviously, we're trying to set this up someday again when Dr. Gray does leave the district, that we don't fall into any pitfalls. But we haven't had a problem. I don't see anybody's brought a legitimate claim to be whatever was a problem in the last 9 years. So in that case, we have to look at our success story as well and keep the administration freed up to run the business and operate.
And on that point too,
Efficiency though.
right, and as a follow-up to that point too, I mean, we're looking at adopting a policy that mandates it. It doesn't mean that if it falls below that threshold that it's not prudent business practice.
Correct.
Under any given circumstance.
Well, we do.
And you do.
Still
And as a perfect example of that, in the $50,000 to $100,000 window, one of the items is the cash flow borrowing, which was $56,531 last year. That number is going to be significantly reduced now because...
It should be zero.
Well, but we've adopted or as a board, we approved and authorized the administration to proceed forward with the letter of credit, which is going to significantly reduce our borrowing costs.
Well, let me give you another example.
So,
if you look at legal services on the first page, legal services, we typically use True Law Firm. We bring a proposal to you each year to sign a retainer with Truman Law Firms. That doesn't mean we don't use other law firms. If we're looking for a very specific piece, I'll give you an example. We had a special ed issue between us and another district this year where we didn't use Truman Law Firm because it didn't make any sense. We have local issues where sometimes we use local law firms because it makes more sense. We don't tie ourselves to these. Now, your legal services used to eclipse 250,000 regularly. Then I would probably say, I bid that each year, in terms of that. But we're usually around that $25,000 to $30,000 range, at least we have been for the last several years. Most of it's in special ed costs. Not all our special ed things go to Troon. Some do, some don't. So that would be another one where one year if we had a whole bunch of issues, it might clip $50,000. And then the next year might be back down to 20. It just varies. And just because we select them and bring them to you as a retainer client doesn't mean they're the only law firm we use. We just bid the trainer services, the $20,000 trainer service.
What about, like, I'm assuming we bid out printing, community ed?
We print those. We
We print those or bid those?
We bid those. Anytime that we think we can save a buck and get as good of service, we save a buck and get a good service. If we didn't, we wouldn't be sitting here with over $3.5 million in fund equity. So it's not like we don't watch these things constantly. It's not that we're not trying to get the best bang for our buck. There also has to be the other coin in terms of the service for it. And that's what we looked at with our privatized custodians back in the day, and we went to a different model and saved money. And that's why we're stuck with the RTC, because there are some benefits with the transportation collaboration too, more than what a private company would do for us. And so that's why we've stuck with that and adjusted some costs. I can't see going with another company and lowering other things and still trying to get bus drivers. That'd be very difficult too. So every single one of these things we look at every single chance we get.
So these are from 2009.
They're-
It looked like you've looked at them too.
They're not all from 2009.
How come these bids of fuel out since 2000?
Yeah, we bid most of these out. It's
Right, like-
2009, the things we bid out were people. And that's because we were $15 million in debt. That's why we had to do it.
If you take this literally, do I understand it that a $299,000 3-year bid or contract or a $499,000 5-year contract would not have to come to the board?
We would bring it,
I agree that you would, but
Just
if
because-
you take this literally, that's kind of what it's saying, right?
yeah, again, we bring things to you that we think we need your approval on. Again, we bring you most of this stuff. The other stuff is just doing business. I think it would be more difficult under 100. I think it would be more labor intensive. Running bid processes takes time, and if you bid constantly, you don't always get the best bids. Not always.
Being that Dr. Chesney brought up some financial stuff, which is good, it's not on the agenda, but this is part of what we're talking about right now. When you look at let's talk about cash flow borrowing. So that's what it costs to borrow the money to run the district.
Last year.
Last year, the year before that, it was under 50,000. Okay, so that's in reduction. So that's a positive thing for the district. If it go down, it's going to continue to go down under the management.
We hope it's zero here eventually.
I can guess from yourself, and everybody has done that. Okay, so it's a good thing. This energy management thing came in, what, 6-8 years ago?
Well, this is different. The energy management thing you're talking about was the computer program that allowed us to actually grab what we were using energy-wise and look for areas to lessen that. We did that. We had over $1 million of savings. We still have that. We're constantly looking at that. What this is when people go out into the market and look for natural gas prices and other utilities at a low rate, and they buy it for us so that we have it.
This is what they charge us to do that
That's
service.
their fee. That's their fee.
And it's a percentage of what we're spending.
I don't know how they do
How do they figure out what we pay them?
They charge us $500 a month, and the difference is the energy education piece that was a 10-year commitment that we're still paying for, which has significantly reduced our cost of electricity and gas.
So if we look at this expenditure, if we looked at not having the service, would we have spent $2 200,000 more a year.
Easy. And, you know, I was
We were over $1 million.
I was converted. Didn't believe that this was gonna get us some savings, and again, I lost the bet, so.
Well, and I'll share with you, that this has only happened under this administration. The prior books I've ever looked at never had anything like this in it. And as I see these come down, this is a good thing. So there's some really good things going on there. They cost a little bit of money, and that's why I shared them. And I think but I agree with protecting us for the future, because not everybody's going to be here forever, and to keep this ship floating in the same direction.
So even like the cash flow borrowing, we just wrapped that up. We bid that out, and we had 3 or 4 banks respond, and we chose PNC because they had the cheapest rate, you know. So there's some things that probably aren't clear because we don't bring those back into the board.
It's just, it depends. We look at different stuff all the time.
Our-
Again, we're cheap.
Our audit services, those are bid out on a countywide basis, and so most people went with Manor. When I got here, I bid the audit, so it's been bid twice in 7 years on the audit services.
Copiers, we bid in.
And on a countywide consortium.
That's going to grow.
Well, and what we've moved more towards countywide, because just like the insurance consortium that we're really, really close to getting done, there's strength in numbers, there's strength in numbers of lives. There's a purchasing power. We purchase food-based like this. We do everything we can to save a buck, because again, if I can save $10,000 for copiers, so that can go directly into a classroom. And I can save $20,000 for cash flow borrowing, it goes directly into a classroom. And that's the goal, I would assume.
So on the health insurance one, the $6 million.
We just wrapped up that bid. I just got the results last week for the bid. Now, we can't change the cost for health insurance unless it's negotiated. It's negotiated in a collective bargaining agreement. And that's the cost of our health insurance for the 15-16 school year.
And so it's possible, though, through this consortium that we're working on, to see a reduction in that healthcare cost.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I wouldn't hold my breath that there's gonna be this all of a sudden huge reduction in cost. What I think you're gonna see is a lessening of increases. So our concern is being experience rated as a small group as opposed to a large group, because the way you win the insurance game is the more lives to spread risk over, because in every district across the state, somebody's gonna have a heart attack, somebody's gonna get cancer, somebody's gonna have an issue. And if you can spread that risk over a larger paying power, then your percentages will stay more flat, because they can predict the percentage-wise and they have that revenue. So I wouldn't look for this to drop by 500,000 or anything like that.
I was thinking like,
Well, it's not going to, and we're hard capped anyways. But what you're really looking forward to for the future is 3% increase, a 2% increase, a 4% increase, as opposed to back in the day when we had a 12% increase, a 17% increase, a whatever percent increase, because risk could get spread.
So the suggestion to the resolution that I've heard, the suggestion to the resolution that I heard was to change. I know, but we're talking about the resolution, we're talking about item C for future action.
we're talking about what's on the sheet in front of me.
What I heard as the substantive change was to change it from the RFP process for up to 5 years. Is that correct?
Strike the 3 and go up to.
Up to a 5-year period.
Up to a 5-year period.
I made the tweak on this right here. So what I put was, be it resolved that beginning all purchase services having an annual cost exceeding $1,000 will be bid.
$100,000.
$100,000, I'm sorry, will be bid using an RFP process within a time period up to, or something along the lines, up to a 5-year period. We'll tweak it.
Yeah, I'm assuming that RFP process is the standard process.
Yeah.
That's what that,
Should be.
It's closed bid, RFP. Yeah, we do them all the time.
So the substantive change is just change that for to
Instead
up
of
to
3 to
5
5 years, just up to a 5-year period.
Very good.
Do you have anything else you wanted to
I did before I so rudely interrupted. All right, so, in that note, we're in this great savings mode and done a great job with the administration. I have another question. On the garden, Oh, our substitute teachers.
Yep.
There was a time we spent almost $1 million in that.
Yep.
So back to bidding and doing things and getting a consortium and, you know, I can,
We just switched that 2 years ago.
yeah, but it was 900,000, if I recall.
1 year, I think it even clipped $1 million.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, so in this budgeting stuff that we're talking about that is so important, and in my opinion, we should talk about the good stuff as well sometimes when there's some that aren't going as well. But I think that's an area that is actually getting funneling dollars back into education at a significant rate. So it's good
Well,
that we're talking about
And
this.
and I think even more than the dollars, and I love substitute teachers, we have some great ones, but there is no substitute for a teacher in front of the kids.
I agree.
And if teachers could be in front of the kids every day, great. Dr. Suri's done a wonderful job over the last 3 or 4 years with not pulling them out as often for curricular issues, only in emergency type situations
So
or
we're
very
getting
better.
a better educational value for each student because the teachers are on site.
Well, I think you can see that as our scores continue to increase every year.
Well, that's a positive thing to talk about. See, so this came out, this is something to talk about that was going in the right direction. I think sometimes
We work-
you may not know that it's going to really start that.
We work very hard at this, so we want to save just as much money as you do, without costing us any service, so we constantly,
Yes, thank you.
constantly.
All right,
I'll make that change before the next.
good job, Finance Committee.
My only question is, do I put this for action or do I put this for future action as a resolution?
I would say change the wording and then put it for action.
Okay.
I would like to see more information, yes.
What do you want to see?
Do you want to set a time to come in and we can sit down and run through it?
No, if you put something in writing and email it to me, that'd be sufficient. But I would like to see, again, I'm not in agreement with these line items, because there's a lot more.
You want it broken out, the detail.
Exactly, that's correct.
So I think, so for the purposes and for the purposes of getting
What you
this process complete and into board policy, can we move this to for action with the caveat that we need to see more detail
The
broken
detail
out
would be the budget. It's detailed line item.
the information that's presented here?
Well,
It is. I mean, that'd be the only place. We could go through the budget and show you line item by line item. That'd be the only place we could pull it from. So the amount we spend on gas would be a line item under transportation of 260 whatever. And that would be a line item for the oil, a line item for the people.
But I don't think what Mr. Trombley's asking for is the budget.
No.
I think what he's asking for is,
What's in there?
well, but then, so perhaps it's then how it's presented, but under transportation, line item out, what each, and you may be saying, that may be what you're
That's exactly what
saying.
I'm saying is.
But line item out, under transportation, each cost, it takes you to the 1.6
So
million.
that's how the budget is listed. Okay, so what's the number for transportation?
71.
So you would have a budget, and the category of 271 in the budget would list it line by line.
To this number of
To that
1.6
number,
million.
correct.
And when we bid out transportation, the RFP was for the whole entire thing. It wasn't chunked out for the buses or the drivers or
Because they won't
the,
bid it that way.
yeah, they don't bid it that way. And in the food service, the RFP comes from the state of Michigan because they're very careful to make sure that only qualified bidders are feeding the children in the state of Michigan. And so the RFP is the whole entire food service program. So when,
including our wages?
yes, and so when I submitted the food service RFP, I wanted to carve out our food service director. And they were like, okay, we will allow that exception, but we never do this. And we had one person bid it, and they said, we can't touch it. So we ended up keeping our in-house food service. And it's not that we haven't looked at other systems, like something like Magic Meals or something like that. We went to Livonia and we looked at how they were doing it, and they looked, we share our costs with them, and they said, sorry, you're running such an efficient operation that you can't touch that. So, I mean, if we put out RFP for food service,
They won't bid
they probably wouldn't, I mean.
So then why is it on the list?
Because we bid it.
because we've bid. And that's what you guys asked for. And you asked for our purchase services, and that's part of it. So that's why we put it on there.
So it went out to more than one operation.
It goes out into an RFP process. There's places that are
Last time.
one, and they didn't even really bid on it.
Yeah.
Because our thing was, Richard Browder is great.
So let's take food service, and I'm trying to get to the point where Mr. Trombley, we're trying to clarify this, and I think I'm on the same page with Mr. Trombley, that I'll take food service, so let's use food services. So if food costs are included in this,
That's right.
how much is the food cost that we're bidding? Because if I'm hearing you correctly, we're not getting any other bids, which seems very strange that Cisco and Gordon and several others wouldn't be all over it.
So what you're looking to bid is your whole entire food service operation, which would be like the Aramarks of the world. You've heard about the state of Michigan with their prison food system. It's those types of people that would bid on a food service operation for a school district. So they would have to be an approved sponsor of the state of Michigan on the approved vendor list, because they're very careful to make sure that we're providing quality food to the students in the Michigan schools. So if you're wondering how much our food supplies are, if you look at page 140 in your board packet, so you notice on our list here that you have as a handout, it's $2,077,157. That number is almost dead center in the middle of page 140 for expenditures, and that's how it's broken out. And so when we would bid this out, they want that whole thing. And so when we bid this, we said, well, we really kind of like our food service director, we'd like to keep him. And there was only one vendor that was willing to work with us because the whole program is under the direction of our food service director, and they didn't want to have our employees supervising their employees. There was one vendor that was willing to do that. We looked at them, but decided that in-house was the cheaper way to go.
They couldn't touch our costs. So for them, it would have been a loser. So when you're talking specifically about food, there's only a couple vendors we can buy food from. Gordon Food Service, US Foods. There's only a couple of them out there because all of our foods are governmentally subsidized and they come through a process. So I just can't go out and say, you know, I'd like to bid Omaha steaks because we really want to feed our kids steaks. That's not how it works. We'd have to go to specific vendors that are already approved because, again, there's such high regulations on food that we serve. Same thing with milk, same thing with cheese, same thing with all of that. We just can't go to a store and say, we'd like to buy it from Myers. It doesn't work that way.
So we did not solicit bids. Let's say we had companies that were willing to bid it with their own manager. We never even looked at their offer compared to our.
Well, our manager is not out of market when it comes to his salaries or his benefits, and the margins were so tight on the food service that it would not have mattered.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we're bidding out the entire package from employee to the food that's served in the cafeteria.
That is correct.
As a whole commodity.
That is correct.
And therefore, under this type of contract, we couldn't bid out the services of the employee in one section and then bid out the cost of the food in another section.
It's unusual. I'm not sure if the state would go along with that because usually they like the whole thing. But also to recall that we are in a purchasing consortium with our food service, so a lot of our supplies come from HPS and Gordon's, and I mean, we do check prices.
So that was bid.
Yeah.
That's why it's in a purchasing
I'm not,
consortium. See what I mean?
yes,
Yeah.
but I think that's,
So just starting back from the beginning, originally I asked about food service. And that was, you know, the food that we had. Then pretty soon it was the labor included, plus the food. Now all of a sudden I'm completely lost the fact of what we're actually buying and what we're not. Because again, are you telling me that all the people that work in all the kitchens in our schools are included in that salary and that's part of the bidding process you're talking
That
about?
is correct.
Okay. So my only point with this whole thing is I believe that this isn't defined enough to where you're never going to go and bid transportation. I don't believe, maybe you did it one time, but you're not going to go and carry $1.6 million to bid transportation because you're never going to bid transportation $1.6 million. You're never going to put it all out for bids, I don't think, as long as LESA is still around, which includes the fuel, the mechanics, the use of our building, everything else that goes along with our buses and our transportation. You're going to bid those things individually, I believe.
Does this 1.6 include the new buses we bought?
We buy them.
That's separate.
But all the ancillary services, I believe, is supposed to be included in that $1.6 million.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, for transportation, you could run 25 individual bids for a department.
But here's the thing.
From oil to gas to lug nuts to tires to
That's what you do, right?
employees. It's, when we put an RFP together, the companies are competing against each other for those categories. We don't just say, hey, why don't you bid transportation? We'd like you to take our kids to school. We would say, we have this many buses, we use this much gas, stuff like that. And then they make a bid based on that RFP. So I guess you could break it out, but typically I would think the RFP would kind of break it out anyways, because they're not going to bid it without seeing those numbers anyways, I would think.
So, are we defeating our own purpose on this if we break it down too much? And by that, if there was a $1.6 million contract and I wanted to game the system and get everything less than $100,000, then I would put together 17
Sure.
$90,000
I guess you
items, and then none of them would have to be bid and come before the board at all.
I guess you could.
Right, so I mean, that's
wouldn't
that's the thing we have to not make happen, is to drive it down so that everything's less than $100,000.
I would not waste my time with 17 bids.
If I may, I think part of the problem is there's a little bit of a disconnect between the purpose of this information and how it relates to the proposed policy. I think that this information was requested by Dr. Chesney just to kind of give the board an idea of the relative costs, right, that are spent in various thresholds, not necessarily with respect to how that factors into this particular proposed policy for all items. Just for example, because the athletic coaches are $492,464, and that's a collective number that just happens to, in our budget, am I correct, Dr. Gustin? That's the cumulative number for all the coaches for that given year. Now, that's not going to be a line item that's going to fit within this policy, or even be something that we would be looking at to incorporate this policy into. So I think it's important to understand that there may be questions that are raised as to how the budget is laid out and how things may be itemized for purposes of the budget, and that's for a different day, I think. I don't think that should have an impact on the propriety or the wisdom of this proposed policy. That's my take on it.
So,
So with that said, I'm comfortable having it put on the for action.
I'm okay with this. I'm not okay with this.
and that's, so.
We can talk about that
So,
one day, if you want.
yes, let's make this further discussion at a later date, probably finance committee or directly with Mr. Trombley in some other forum, and let's move this process for purchase of services to for action at the next meeting.
With the minor changes that we...
With the minor changes that have been
We'll
discussed.
send it out to you prior, just so you know.
All right. All right, board committee reports. Anything? Yeah, we've got
They did enough on finance.
Okay.
The only report I have is that our committee will begin on November 7th.
And which group is that one? Facilities? Facilities, okay. Thank you.
We met, the finance committee actually worked on this project for the future tonight. And also we did a little tour of the bridge here for the school and classrooms and potentially maybe some redevelopment of the existing space and going potentially a proper garage environment / maintenance division for Brighton area schools. And we have $1,300,000 So we, right now, are utilizing classrooms for the storage of things because the classrooms at the time weren't really needed, so they got occupied, just kind of like a as-needed type of thing. And in this classroom space, as well as current building that we have, that may have classrooms that don't need any modifications, can be used to extend career technical education to our Bridge School. And I'm proposing that we look at a not-to-exceed budget of $1.2 million to renovate the bridge. Now, that $1.2 million is a not-to-exceed number, but reality is, I want you guys to think about this, which is not here tonight. But reality, the community did a millage, ran a millage, to improve educational value within each school district. I mean, it's in the millions. Ours particularly is going to be just under 20 million in increased taxes over the next 10 years. So we can look at building fund equity, which is very important to me as a board member, but also looking at spending some of that fund equity. And so we're going to be $1 million less maybe, but we can put a true value to our students. So that's what I'd suggest we think about. And maybe have a little less fund equity, but yet let's build an operation where it'll be the school of choice for, I believe, not just dozens more, but hundreds more students. And I think it'd be well spent, and I think that's our job as custodians of the taxpayers' dollars. I think our students deserve it in the community. Right now, I can see what we're doing has been wonderful, and growth that's happened already. And get behind our management, our educators, will truly be beneficial for our students. Thank you.
Could you remind me what that millage was for again, please?
Well, my opinion of what the millage was for, which ran countywide.
You know, the official language or what
It was a special education millage.
Okay.
And Dr. Gray or Dr. Gesher could probably tell us exactly what the wording was because they didn't know about it particularly, but it was meant to enhance the programs within the school systems, which for us, we talked about the budgeting and where this offsets expenses we had and balance with and without it, and balance before we had it, and with it, it helped us balance that part of the equation closer to our expense, true expense in that column. But again, our fund equity growth is going to be in the neighborhood of $2 million, which again, we have shared service programs which generate net of a couple million, $2 to $3 million a year right now, and we have this additional 1.9 million, give or take 100,000. 1.65. It's 1.65 right now. 1.8. 1.65 to us. We have that money coming in as additional revenue that was not planned on a year ago, a year and a half ago. So I would just like to see that. I really think we can take some lessons from our past. It wasn't that long ago at the high school and look at from engineering CAD to our school store now to I was in Sparks classroom the other day and looked at a total transformation in the cooking and culinary program. It looks great. She's done a great job. She'd been asking for years to renovate, to get it ready to run. I mean, it is truly professional there. And I believe we have the opportunity to do that here as well. The students will yield big benefits. Yes, sir. Thank you.
As a follow-up and an incomplete agreement with Mr. Compton.
Oh, my goodness.
What are the chances?
But
just that
your assignments.
we have,
Chesney, now I'm going to sign right.
we have our twice monthly meetings where we do kind of the business of the day. And we have our 5-year strategic plan that, what are the things that we want to accomplish over the next 5 years. And I think what Mr. Connolly is getting to is we're in a very unique, positive position that we could really have an interesting conversation about the vision for the school district long term. And not a strategic plan, not a day-to-day operations, but what are the things, what is capacity predictions, what are areas that we want to grow within the school district long term, and just, kind of a think big, dream big vision type of retreat or meeting where we could just kind of hash it out of what our different ideas are. And we're in a very unique, wonderful position to be able to do that. I don't know when or where or how to fit that in, but again, consistent with what Mr. Connolly's talking about, it's like, let's figure out what direction we want to take the school district.
On that, another item this week discussed discussed, we didn't talk about much in the finance meeting, but we've been talking about our vision for developing new opportunities at our high school as well. And I think this goes hand in hand with that, and it should be discussed. But I would like to see in the next few weeks an exploratory program in place at Woodbridge High School, which would include engineering CAD, some light CNC machining equipment, some other items that would be put in place very easily and very low cost. Actually toured around a little bit looking for a classroom that's already suitable, doesn't need to be rebuilt. There's an opportunity to do that, and I would request that the board think about that, and we go back to our superintendent and Dr. Gessler. They have authority to these types of expenses without our permission, by the way. But with our support, it should be better to do that and get something rolling. I believe it can get going very quickly. And tonight we had a situation where our principal from Bridge couldn't be here due to a family situation. All was going well, I understand, with her daughter, and we helped them think about her and put her in our prayers at that part because she's a daughter in a car accident. Things seem to be fine, but still, right? And but I would like to see her opinion on that and what we can do as her as the leader and us as the support group. But I believe that we will see instant rewards from any type of improvement and stepping forward and taking that risk. Small risk for huge gain. Thank you.
For clarification, just on the information, the 1.9 million you're talking about is the money that comes from LESA that was supposed to supplement already underfunded special needs, correct?
Correct.
So you, and I know
I'm only
this is
asking
still a
I'm
discussion.
only asking for 1.2 million of it.
Right, but I guess, and I'm just throwing this out here, I'm not against more programming for those kids, but we've got two things. We've already agreed upon at one point that we wanted to get to 10% fund equity, or I believe we actually had a different figure than that. I can't remember exactly what that was, but we want to get around there, and we're not there yet, so
This is going to be unfair debate. Go ahead.
I understand. But, and I guess in my personal, and this is my personal opinion on it, that $1.9 million is money that we've been taking out of our general fund to fund something that's underfunded anyways, and it still isn't fully funded with the 1.9. So I'm looking at that like, well, before we start spending that, let's think about funding what it's supposed to go to more, or get it closer to where it's supposed to be before we're spending it. Now, I'm not saying that this idea I love the idea, but we've got two goals. One is to maybe fully fund that someday, the special needs, and to get to our fund equity projection or goal that we set 2 years ago now, 3, I don't remember. Without, I guess what I'm saying is those dollars, no matter where they came from, are only going to go so far. So we're going to have to think, okay, what's important to us? Do we not want to get to 10% in the amount of time that we talked about now? Or do we not want to fully fund special needs? So the idea is great, but the funding is what
To keep us on track this evening in the topic of discussion where we're at with the agenda, what I'm hearing is perhaps Dr. Surrey maybe get with the Bridge administration, they have a conversation about putting together a proposal on what it would look like to do similar to what Mr. Conley is proposing. If it truly is something that maybe could happen relatively quickly, at least that's something for us to react to. Secondly, I've put a note on this piece of paper in front of me to set something up for sometime in January for the board to get back together and talk about some longer-term visioning on where we might want to look at putting investment into the future for the district, beyond just what's being presented tonight, but across all the programming that we're doing and how we want to continue to move that forward.
I support your move to get moving. I wanted to tell you, they got the real numbers, so it's 69 students for robotics from 3. Similar to the situation here at the Bridge, reason I'm bringing it up, I want to get the number 21 returning, 48 new, may lose a few to attrition. What's the budget? 29,000. Okay, so you break that up, but looking at where we got to go, and Ken brings up a valid point from finance, but I'll share with you that he's totally wrong, even thinking that way. 100% wrong. Okay, these dollars allocated to this district were allocated for our students to use for the benefit of the students. We have not spent another dollar in advanced programming because of that millage increase. We have we've balanced our budget, we've got fund equity of $2 million, growing $2 million in addition to the gap. And the reality is, it doesn't matter what the fund equity is today. It matters only that we positively affect our students. And I'm tired of hearing that we should think about that. That's not true. We have students that are at risk. We have students that have different schedules. They have other things. And we have a need, immediate, that will benefit those students. It's our decision to use the taxpayers' money as we see fit. And I see it fit. And I'll represent that once everybody looks at the case and the benefit, they'll also see it fit. But I see where he's coming from, but that approach is the old way. And these dollars, I mean, the administration, there may be a day you have to say you can't do it. Today you can do it. We have a new orchestra. We have a new this. We have things that are benefiting their kids throughout the district. There's absolutely no reason that our students here shouldn't get a similar benefit to those other kids.
My question, I guess my point is this. To me, fund equity is doing the same thing, because if in a year, a week, a day, something happens that causes the market to crash, and we're in a bad position, I don't want to be cutting programs that you just started. I don't want to be sitting here having to decide who we get rid of in order to make our bills every month, because that fund equity, where we're at now, what are we, 4 million? That's going to last about 2 days in an environment like that. That's my point. Let's make sure we can protect what we've got if something like that happens, and then.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Just protect the ones that have it now and don't worry about the others, Mr. Stahl. That's
not what I said.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's not even close to what I just said. I want to
to
protect everyone in the district by making sure there's money here if in some day we do need.
So if history repeats itself, what happened to our last fund equity?
It's been over a few years.
I think we'll all agree that our goal is to maintain fund equity and provide the most robust programming that we can all provide. Mr.
I agree.
That's it.
Well, I just want, this is a follow-up to kind of all of what's been discussed, and Mr. Birchfield asking Dr. Suri to do an investigation. I mean, I think that based upon my preliminary investigation and some of the conversations I've had, there's sort of a short-term approach and a long-term approach. I mean, the type of dollars that Mr. Conley was referring to is obviously a longer term. I mean, that would entail repurposing the existing rooms that are currently being used for maintenance purposes, building another maintenance garage, which I think is certainly a valid thing to look into on a longer term basis. I mean, that's a discussion that is going to require a consideration of all the goals that we've talked about. But in the short term, I think there may be some opportunities where there may be some existing classroom space that could be potentially repurposed, that could provide some enhanced programming for some of the at-risk students, that could, if nothing else, could even potentially be sort of a prototype approach. Like that word?
Yeah.
Where there's not a substantial investment of resources, but you're using existing facilities. And
very little, actually.
There may be,
and it's called a test run, Roger. You know, and I always know that not everything that you do is going to be done continually. Okay, maybe something you change, maybe something that didn't work at all. But reality is, we are in an area of knowing needs are present to produce, to react to those needs. We really know they're there. And in absence of doing that, we're I call it dereliction of duty, to be honest, because we know the needs are there and we can address them and we can make it better. And that's our job. And I don't care if we have zero fund equity when we're done. And at a point, because you cut it away. And we've looked at the board before, and Dr. Gessinger's brought it to us and said, guys, you're going to get to do this, or you're going to get to do that, and that's life. But until that day comes, why should we short the students currently anything? They shouldn't be shorted anything, and they don't have to wait. They shouldn't wait a day. If we know they need it, if they need stitches, we're going to give them stitches. If they need whatever it is, we're going to do it. I think that, I think it wasn't the right word, stitches, but the idea is we're going to take care of the needs. And I would suggest your thinking is dated. And we need to react, do it, and if we have to cut the budget later, we cut the budget later. Until then, make sure the kids are taken care of, students. Thank you, sir.
no, that's okay. I mean, all I'm saying is I don't think we need to look at it as an all or nothing, blow up the budget versus doing nothing approach. I think there's some incremental steps that can be looked into that won't break the budget, that could provide some of the enhanced opportunities that Mr. Collins is referring to on a more near-term basis as a possible.
On that, with the board's permission, I'd like to just do a kind of consensus on that. We could have Dr. Gessinger look into, we could have her look into the costs of like what Mr. Jordan uses for the 3D printers, the computer-aided design printers and computers, and maybe two of them for here. And also, we're looking at an engineering a CAD system that'll do CNC prototype machining. We're looking at one of those right now. We can get some Mr. Roberts on that to get specifications. The GM engineers have already looked at those bid specs and have approved that that would work through the robotics team, where we could have one of the same machines here at the bridge, and then we could have the program to look at getting instruction here for those machines. So we could look at what those costs are. Very low costs.
So I think as part of the proposal, that let's capture what some of the short-term recommendations and potential solutions might be for the board to react to. What I would also advocate to everyone in this room is that let's think outside the box, because if we have big equipment, we have resources, we have materials in other spaces within this district, then we should be leveraging that before we're going out and spending more dollars for the same thing.
I don't disagree, but these machines aren't available. I left a message, and in fact, they're not getting support at all from high school on the issue. And I would suggest that I've already done that. And that all I'm asking for is that Dr. Gessner look into the cost, so that we have our next board meeting, she can say, you know what, this is what this kind of equipment would cost, and you'll see that it's minimal in scope of our budget.
Do you have like a specific machine that you could actually?
We do. That's why I hit Dr. Gessner. If you, I would, again, I'd rather have you just go direct to Mr. Roberts and get the specifications from him. And then also regarding Mr. Jordan's equipment, I'd like to parallel those so they're identical in scope, so that these machines can be used in both facilities, and that the people trained on them are capable of training and teaching, and students will be familiar with them, and have an idea on that in the future of how students would come and assist here at the bridge as well. But that would be another discussion with the principal and superintendent. So, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. That closes out board committee report. Second call to the public. Does anyone wish to address the board this evening for second call to the public?
I just wanted to say that some of you are talking really close to the mics, and I'm under a speaker right there, and it makes this really high-pitched, annoying noise. So if some of you could distance the mics a little bit, maybe some of you guys don't hear it back there, but it's kind of
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Park, Brighton High School. About the contract and the teacher signing the contract, you know, as a teacher, I don't want that liability to sign a contract. When we sign a contract with Eastern Michigan University for graduation, I don't sign that contract, but I am the person that Eastern contacts for everything. Mr. Gavin Johnson signs that contract because, you know, that's a district responsibility, and as a teacher, I don't want that responsibility. That was one thing. If we have a lot of money, I'd like to see you give the substitutes a $25 a day raise. You have so much money, you need? That's a need. We have a shortage of qualified substitutes. We're scrambling in this district, and, you know, we're saving a lot of money on those substitutes, but it's hurting the classroom. So you've got a lot of money to throw around up here. I'll give you a list of things that the teachers need, or your staff needs, your principals need, your students needs, as far as textbooks and other things. I appreciate the passion that I'm hearing up here today, but some of it is just like blowing my mind after sitting here for 30-some years, and in the last 10 years listening about fund equity and savings, and part of me just gets very angry. We've all worked very hard to put fund equity back into our system, all of us, And now I'm hearing comments like, let's just spend it all, I don't care, we're not worried. There could be a stock market crash, there could be all kinds of things that could happen, and we finally get a little cushion, but we want to, I don't know, it's just really upsetting, that's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else wish to address the board? Okay. Our next regular board meeting is Monday, November 13th, 2017. Have a good evening.